Is it near Vale?
It is about 10 miles away.
Excellent.
So I'm
Excellent.
in my office in my work facility.
Right on. Perfect. Well, we're hooking up. It's going to take a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Let me go in and I'll tag you on the. I'll tag you on the. Wow, how did that happen? I got a picture of the Buddha. I don't know where that came from.
It could be worse.
Yeah, it could. You're right. Yeah, I forget who was on this weekend that brought you up.
Ah.
So I knew that we're on the right track.
Well, yay.
I don't see it. Yeah, it's on. Let's see. Huh. Yeah, it's on. For some reason it's not coming up. Let me refresh it. Yeah, somebody was on this weekend. We were talking about walk-ins, and they said that and they brought you up. Evidently, you wrote a book on walk-ins. Is that right?
I did. I did.
So that'll be interesting to dive into that a little bit. God,
Okay.
I don't see this on my page. Huh. Oh, wait a minute. That's weird. Another weird thing from the Ascension. Okay. So all right, I'm gonna tag you on it. Okay, here we go.
Okay, great.
Just so you'll have it. Let's see.
Thank you.
Let's see here. Okay. There you are. Okay. Done. All right. Exactly 2 minutes. That's usually. Oh, that was Pamela. She just said that was her that said it. Thank you for reminding me. My 3D memory is gone.
Thanks, Pamela.
Pamela's a special, special, special sister. God, that's an understatement. So yeah, we're here with a new friend. At least as far as this is typical Soulogy style. We'll get to know each other, in a spontaneous manner. The emphasis. Well, I think the emphasis has always been the hero's journey at Soulogy. It's just that Morgan honed in on it this month, and the gold in our stories. But yours is intertwined. We're going to learn a little bit, I hope, about walk-ins, because there's so much talk about it, and like everything, there's different connotations and different perspectives.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see, especially because I don't follow anybody's intel as a gospel, but it's nice that a lot of the intel that people have is converging at the same time. So there's a lot of validation out there. And I saw recently in I guess and keeping in mind everything is a metaphor, it's all energy, but Jason Estes talking about as a backdrop, you read Edgar Casey, Dolores Cannon, Franco, Jason talk about different terms, but they talk about NPCs, they talk about the cutout people or the background people or the extras, and that based on those four, there's 30-40% of us that are individual souls, I guess is one way to put it. But Jason recently came out with some intel a few weeks ago where he talked about there would be 6 billion walk-ins between now and I think November or December. And I thought, cool. Wow, yeah. Woo-hoo. So I thought, yeah, that energetically feels right, because it leads to a trajectory of further expansion. So on one hand, you might, and again, I'm not well versed in walk-ins, but it would seem like there would be upgrades to individuals that are individual souls, but also maybe some of these extras would be taking on individual souls as well to expand the new grid. So yeah, and then for you to come on and be able to talk about it a little bit, we'll get to hear your insight. But yeah, so this is about you. I mean, I like to ask people like yourself, the unicorns of the world, have you always been this weird, or was there some kind of trauma that accelerated the process?
Well, I think maybe I was always this weird, but I'm not sure, because what happened to me in my life up until age 38, I was just, a regular person going about life, had a job, husband, raising 3 kids, everything that is entailed with that. I lived in Virginia. I did all the stuff that you would normally think about a mom doing with their kids, going to basketball, those kinds of things. But on top of all of that, I was a very sick person. And my illnesses actually started in my 20s. Initially, I was diagnosed with the potential of brain tumors. They said that I had what they would say the early phases of MS, and that the likelihood of my being in a wheelchair by the time I was in my late 30s was very possible. They also thought I might have brain tumors and said, well, to verify that, we'd have to go in and actually do exploratory. And I'm like, nah, that's okay. So they gave me this whole list of things. Oh, they even said, there's this new thing called AIDS. Now, we don't really know a lot about it, but you might have that too. But we don't really know what's going on with you. And so I left there. Thank you very much. After the spinal tap and having migraines and, being in my 20s, I just, kept on. And then in my 30s, I was walking down a stair railing or a staircase. I put my hand on the stair railing and my clavicle just shattered. And so when I went to the doctor, they immediately sent me to Duke University and said, oh, well, you've got bone cancer. And so what we need to do is to take this portion of the clavicle out. We're going to replace it with hip bone, and you're going to have to learn to rewalk. You'll be in physical therapy, blah, blah, blah. And when they got in to do the surgery, lo and behold, they're like, well, we don't understand. It was there. Now it's not, but this is good news for you. So they sewed me up, sent me home. Then I began to have a lot of leg issues and had what's called erythema nodosum, which is part of sarcoidosis and autoimmune issues. And so I did actually end up walking with a cane. And on top of it, I had migraines every day, chronic fatigue, you name it. A lot of times I would play with my kids from the couch. And so I was a very sick person, but I just kept pushing myself. And then one night I went to bed, this very sick person, and what seemed to be around 7:00 that morning, it felt as if someone reached down, grabbed me by the hair of the head. I sat bolt right up in bed, and it was like lightning ran through my body. And then I was in white space. And I don't know how long I was in white space, but then as my vision started to come in, first it was the peripheral, and then it was my frontal vision. And at that instant, everything was different. Everything was the same as I looked around the room, but everything was different. I felt different. There was a different energy about me. When I got up out of bed and I walked by the mirror and I saw myself, I was dumbfounded. I just stood there and stared at myself. And it's like, oh my God, I was looking at my hair and looking at my teeth. And, and it was like a stranger actually looking back at me. That's the only way I know how to describe it. And then as I would walk by my clothing and pick them up or move them, it was as if they were telling me where I wore them last. And then I started having all this information, and I started hearing these voices talking to me and telling me things. And I started seeing images of people in a room, and there wasn't anyone in there. Now, at that time, I had never even read a metaphysical book. So I didn't know about clairvoyance or clairaudience, and I sure did not know about walk-ins. And if someone would have told me at that time I was a walk-in, I would have told them they were crazy. People had said, oh, have you read Shirley MacLaine's book Out on a Limb? And it's like, I don't believe in that stuff. So I went to bed not remember or believing in past lives, but after whatever happened to me, I started remembering past lives. And I remembered what it was like to be on the other side. And I remembered all this information about the universe and oversouls and it just didn't make sense to me because I didn't believe in it. And so I went about this way for several months. I first tried to explain it to my husband, what had happened, and he started, kind of backing away from me a little bit. And then within 3 months, I had left that marriage because it was like, I don't even know who this person is. And everything about me changed. My personality was totally different. My eating styles, the clothing that I wore, everything was just different. And so after that, after I left, those 3 months, I still remained in that area. But within another 3 months, I had moved to Kentucky. And I found my first spiritual teacher there. And I found her because I was seeking actually mental health counseling because my background was in psychology. So honestly, I thought I was having a mental breakdown. I thought between the illnesses and the dysfunctional marriage and, the kids and everything, I just thought maybe it was too much. And I might have been having a psychotic break. And so as I explained my story to this spiritual counselor that I had found, eventually in our conversation, she had said, well, honey, I think you're a walk-in. I don't believe you're having a psychotic break. And when she said that, it resonated true for me, but I didn't have any background. And I was kind of angry because it's like, just give me a prescription, because that's where my head was at the time, Western medicine. Just give me a prescription, give me a pill, everything will go away, life will get back to normal. But that's not what she gave me. Instead, she gave me spiritual teachings. And come to find out, she was had Hopi lineage. And so she was a Hopi elder, and she had a psychology practice. And if it had not been for her, and it had not been for my circle sisters, I think that I probably would have had a nervous breakdown, because it was 6 months after that I really started delving then into the metaphysical. And still to this day, and this is 22 years later, still to this day, I have information that continues to come forward. And there, the saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will come. It's the same thing with this information. When I get to a certain level, more information will come through. And then as I share that, and I'm very clear about it, then I have more information that comes through. But one of the things that I wanted to share was when I left that marriage, and then 4 years later, I remarried and moved to Colorado. And it was there that I started my healing practice, which is where I'm at right now. This is the upgraded version of what started, almost 20 years ago or 16 years ago. And so I was working one day, and I was talking with my guides, and I was asking them, okay, well, tell me, what happened to the soul that was in my body before? And they began to explain to me about soul contracts. And they are the ones that told me that there typically is an agreement that takes place before a new soul will walk into a body and the old soul departs. Most of the time, it's because there's a soul contract in the pre-birth planning phases before a soul will incarnate. Now, in my situation, it was a little bit different because, gosh, how do I explain this? I was part of a collective of my multidimensional self. We're all multidimensional beings, all having multidimensional experiences right now. All time occurs, past, present, future, here and now. And so I was out past the Andromedan area in my collective, and we felt this almost like this vibration, but it was a resonance, and it was a call from Gaia. And so we moved over into the earth segment, and we basically enshrouded the earth, and it was kind of like we're flowing to, but we're flowing through, along with all of the various dimensions of this planet. And so I was there working since the 90s. We were working on the crystalline grid. And that's where I was, I had my mantis aspects, I had my Palladian, my Arcturian, my angelic, my Andromedan and Lyran, just like we all have, whether we remember that or not. We've all had multiple lifetimes in many different planets and solar systems, etc. But there was a cry also that came out from the soul of this body. And when that cry went out, it was decided by the collective that I would come in. And so I had really, I have worked with my guides. I have asked a lot of people. And every time I come across someone who talks about walk-ins, I'm like, okay, so now what's your theory on walk-ins? Because I know what I feel to be my truth. So I'm always interested in other people. And I am also the founder of the Wish Alliance, which I'll talk about here in just a little bit. But we just recently, in partnership with New Realities and Portal to Ascension, hosted the hybrid conference. And so Daryl Anka was on there. And I asked him, I said, so Daryl, what does Bashar think about walk-ins? Because I was really curious of his perspective. And according to Bashar, he says that all walk-ins are an aspect, a higher aspect of the original soul that was in the body. And when I said, okay, but like with me, I had no memory. When I came into the body, I knew my 3 children. I knew the husband. I knew my parents and my sister, and that was about it. I had no attachment with anyone else in my life. And I didn't have memories associated with relationships and people that I apparently was very close with. So I was always curious about that. And so what Daryl was explaining is that because the aspect of this soul that came in was like light years, and even in a different dimensional time frame, when that aspect, which was part of that overall collective, chose to incarnate, I had no memories because I had never lived this lifetime. So even though I was a future aspect, it was a future aspect of the overall collective within that oversoul. Now, according to my guides, when they talk about an oversoul, they started talking to me initially about what they call the Shantias Khan. And the Shantias Khan is what most of us think of as our personal oversoul, which is like our cloud storage. And it has all the information from all of our other lifetimes and everything that we've ever experienced in physical form. It kind of unravels and goes back in, and it kind of edifies that Shantias Khan. And so when we incarnate, the Shantias Khan is made up of the light sound frequency. It's almost like a grid system of flashing lights and energy and sound. And so as you're kind of in this swirling energy, getting ready to incarnate, you're grabbing a little bit of this skill and a little bit of that skill. And as you come down, that part that stays attached is considered the higher self. And when that higher self then actually attaches to the physical body, that would be considered your soul or your personality of the lifetime. But all of that energy that's flowing to and through you at all the time is your spirit energy, which is, part of your overall collective self. And so I sat with that for a while with my guides, and that really did make a lot of sense. But some of the other teachings then that I got from my teacher, she said, okay, now when you move, because I was in Kentucky, I got married, moved to Colorado, and she really wanted me to start sharing the spiritual teachings that I had learned from the Hopi and sharing the ways of the women. And so I was doing that. But I also had to start incorporating some of my truth. And that's why I was sitting so much and studying with my guides to learn out exactly what was happening. And so from my memories, as I'm sure is the memories of many people out there, is, everything starts with source, of course. and source, Father, Mother, God, Great Spirit, whatever you want to call it, that, that beacon of light, source energy. And when there was that first vibrational frequency of expansion, the Om, then all of the light and sound was kind of gathered and contained within what I call the etheric field, or that void, because that's the place of all possibilities. Mm-hmm. And from that, then we have what we call our creation blueprints. And there's hundreds of thousands and so many we can't even think of. But from those blueprints, then we have our creation templates. And if you take one of those creation templates for an oversoul, let's say for this galaxy, from within that, you also have like this master oversoul, which is really kind of the main container of all the oversouls. And then we go down to that universal oversoul. And these are just kind of laws or memories that my guides gave me. Now, whether they apply to other universes, I don't know. But from there, we come down to our cosmic oversoul. And if we look at the numbers that science gives us, let's see, I wrote that down. In our galactic oversoul, the potential could be 10 to the 20th power, because that's how many galaxies that they now think are contained within our universe. And so then we come down and we have the planetary oversoul. And there is said to be 70 quintillion. Now, I don't even know how many that is, but I do know, according to my guides, that each one of the planets has their own major oversoul. And even within that oversoul, you have these experiential learning oversouls. So like with planet Earth, has her container of oversouls, and there would be like 12 major oversouls. And one of those oversouls may have, say, the lesson of love and compassion. One or the other may have, you may come into the planet to experience grief. You may have experienced everything else there is, but you don't know what grief is about. And so within that oversoul, then you have a lot of those individual oversouls, or the Shantias Khan, which I was referencing. And so throughout our soul progression, we can move within those experiential oversouls, which actually help to edify our oversoul. And depending on what the lessons are that we need, there may be another aspect of us incarnated on this planet. We could be having multiple lifetimes within our own galaxy, or we may have a couple aspects in this universe and a couple out in the other universe. But my guides were sharing all of this information. Now, imagine somebody that's never even read metaphysical books. I was like, wah! I couldn't even understand what they were talking about. And so for me, the transformation from becoming who I was to who I am now has really been a progression. And if it weren't for like my spiritual teacher helping me, and I felt so blessed to have her in my life, because without her, I would have just thought I was crazy and maybe have gone and checked myself into an institution. And if I had told my story to them, I guarantee you they would have locked me up and, probably thrown away.
They'd open your skull that time.
That's exactly right. It's like, this is not experimental now.
Let me throw a couple of things at you. This is fascinating. And it's very much needed, I think. Okay. So I've only heard of one person, and I know there's many. Don't get me wrong. I have a friend, probably the first time I ever even heard anything like this. She came on the show. This is back in the early days, like show 100 or 200 or something. But she was I think a meth and heroin addict, and she literally woke up like you did. She literally woke up. And we, anyone that's ever had any type of issue with any chemical knows it's not an easy thing just to let go of something. Wow. She stopped everything that day. Her whole, she had a walk-in, obviously. Now, my own thoughts with all the information I've been exposed to has been what you said. I see these are higher aspects of me, right? Or whoever the person is. That makes sense. And you know, oneness is oneness. And with the web, the network and the connectivity of the universe, we know it all goes back to, like you said. Now, then another point of reflection would be with Morgan. You know, I mean, I've 6 years, we met in another 10 days or so. So this has been an ongoing thing every day. And she's, you know, we've talked about it. But I remember we were in Northern California a couple of years ago at this cabin, and I'm in the kitchen, and we were there for 6 weeks, and we had come over from Hawaii, and we were starting grid work through all the country and whatever. So we were there, and it was in the middle of nowhere, and she walked in the kitchen, and she looked at me, and she's looking at me really weird. And later on, I found out that she walked in the kitchen that morning and said, "Who the hell is this guy? What the hell am I doing here?" Okay. Now I look at this and I go, you know, from my consciousness, did I detect a difference? Well, there was a difference, but it was still Morgan. Okay. Which is kind of left me kind of, you know, so then I get, and had been developing a continual relationship with Franco Di Nicola, who comes on twice a month. And he's got recollection of several planetary, full recollection of incarnations on other planets, and I won't get into all that, but pretty good source to consider, right? So I asked him about it several times on the show. I'd say, what is the difference between the human and what you're talking about? And he's gone on to explain that, well, that there's a human lineage, and then there's a soul lineage. So, and I'm still kind of, you know, I'm listening to you, and I'm kind of trying to bring this to a full circle. So I get that. I get that there's a part of me that I can relate to that's had some memories of past lives, let's say, on the earth. But I also get that, you know, and I never have felt that there was a walk-in. But what I have felt is multiple aspects coming in. And I remember when I started Soulogy, and I would go back, I don't do it anymore, but I would go back and, you know, this is like in the early days, oh my God, what did I say? Or, you know, I would just turn on the camera and be walking down the street. But what I noticed was different personalities in almost like they jump into me. And so I thought, well, that's interesting, you know. So I'm still not totally clear on it. I don't know if we can understand all of this stuff, but your information is really solid, and the fact that you've experienced it. So my question is to you, like in this time, this seminal time of evolution, right, of the consciousness of the human and so on, why are we conscious 99% of the time here in our awake state with what seems to be a very small percentage of our multidimensionality in our consciousness? Is it always there? Are we, you know, is it so, you know, in other words, are they bleeding through each other so with, you know, with so much cohesion that we don't notice it? I mean, or is it just a different bag of tricks for everybody, like a box of Cracker Jacks? You know what I mean?
Okay. What I do know is that Earth is a very hard planet to live on. Mm-hmm. The duality that exists here, I think, is actually the resolution between what we think we know and operating from, taking that knowledge and operating from our heart. That's what the duality is for me. Okay. When we're born, we are actually, you know, okay, there are the two main aspects: the physical body, which is actually our car to get us around in this 3D life. And then there's the soul, who is the driver of that car. Okay. Our soul has many lifetimes. And there are layers upon layers of the soul there are so many templates out there that we can be operating in and through at any given time. And by that, what I mean is every time we look around and every time we make a decision, that decision is being played out somewhere, whether you want to call it parallel realities, whether you want to call that multiple dimensions. And so our soul is actually making all of these moves just like this through all of these dimensions or timelines or parallels, to where we look around then and say, oh, gosh, everybody's changed. Everything is different. But in fact, it's because we are actually more of our own self. We've brought in more of our higher knowledge, and we're able to move through those dimensions as we continue to progress higher and higher and higher. The physical lineage, that's just kind of the story of the meat suit. That's that was the animal on the planet when we began to, how things evolved, whether people want to think that it was, the Adam and Eve story, or if the Anunnaki story, whatever, wherever people's belief systems lie. But the physical body is also progressing. And at this particular point in time, we are being exposed to more and more energetic frequencies, which are washing across our planet, coming in from the solar system, enacting our own light codes within our souls as well as within our physical bodies. And so I believe our bodies are actually progressing as our souls are progressing to the next phase. Because personally, I believe every person on this planet is a starseed. Very, very few. And I have to say, there are a few people who I have met that had an agreement that came in with Gaia and have gone through the progressions of Gaia's journey. And those would be considered earth seeds. But most people are star seeds. And most people on this planet that are awake and ready are bringing in more of their soul selves. Now, when I guess it was about 2 years ago, about 2.5 years ago, I had this funky illness that just hit me all of a sudden, and it kind of put me out of commission for a while. And I was talking to my friend, Barbara Lamb, the hypnotherapist, and she was saying, this might be the perfect time for you to write your book. And so I began to think about all the things that I wanted to include in the book, what should be included, what shouldn't be included. And even as I wrote my story, it's like, nobody's going to believe this. I don't have any scientific data. I can't back this up and say, oh, there's been 12 studies that says blah, 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 blah. But then I also said, on the other hand, well, you know what? The majority of the people on this planet believe that there's a soul, and there's no proof to that either. So we're talking about a soul experience. So I'm just going to share mine. But then I also began to talk to other walk-ins as well, and I wanted to include their stories in the book. So I interviewed quite a few, and I chose 15 out of all of those. And honestly, I think at first I thought everybody's story was going to be similar to mine, that one soul came in, the other soul left, or something, what happened, who knows? But I thought everything was going to be very, very similar. And what I found out, yes, every one of us had some similar threads, but everybody had a different story. And so then the next thing I did was started taking those stories, and how we humans like to do, put everything in these nice little categories and boxes. And so I came up with different types of what I call, walk-in experiences, but they're actually soul experiences. Yeah. And so the first would be like mine, a soul exchange, where the old aspect left and all brand new aspect came in. Then there's what's called a soul infusion. And I think a lot of people are experiencing this now without so much the walk-in. I'll explain the difference. But a soul infusion is when the majority of the old soul leaves and newer, higher aspects of that soul come in. And all of walk-in situations typically occur when there is like accidents, or people are having surgeries. Sometimes it's severe emotional or physical traumas, but illnesses, those types of things. That's usually what brings on the typical walk-in experience. And so with those soul infusion individuals, a lot of those that I talked to were very, very sick people as well.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's what's called a soul overlay. And so the soul stays and a new aspect comes in and attaches, kind of like a neoprene suit. And it can do several different things. It can be there just to help through certain situations. Maybe there's a trying situation and this old soul was not going to be able to handle it, and this other aspect comes in. It could be that the soul is weakened and the other soul comes in and sort of acts like a battery charger. But there is an infusion that takes place, and then eventually either the overlay leaves, or the overlay stays and the old soul leaves, or the two of them meld and become one soul. And then there's what a lot of people talk about as being a soul braid. And the soul braids are when you actually have two very different souls and they literally braid themselves together. They're very intertwined within the physical body, yet the soul aspects themselves are very much aware of the other. And unlike an overlay where there could be a melding, there never is. There's always those two distinctive aspects of the person. And then we have what's called the jumpers. And that's kind of sounds like what you were talking about, where a lot of times souls will come in and then they'll leave. And then they'll come in for an experience and they'll leave. They might come in and act as a muse and then they leave. Or you'll have multiple jumpers at one time to come in to a body. And I believe all of these are arranged. They're pre-agreed upon. A walk-in never is a hostile takeover or will not come in without permission. It just doesn't work that way. Yeah. And so you'll have jumpers, and then you have what I think is one of the most fascinating called the soul layering. And I think a lot of people are experiencing that right now. Because we are multidimensional beings, we can have multiple aspects that come in when we incarnate. And at any given point in time, one aspect will come to the forefront and it will recede. And then another one will come to the forefront and recede. And so you always have this soul dance of sorts. And the person, the main soul, is always in control of that, but always very much aware if another aspect is having an experience. And a lot of people, when I started talking about that, you know, I've been told, oh, you need to be burned on a cross. You're demonically possessed. You're crazy. And I'm like, oh, whatever, you know. And so one person, though, said, that sounds like multiple personalities. And there's a huge difference. First off, one of the first people that I ever met that I would classify as a soul layering actually had their PhD from Harvard. And they were very intellectual and could explain the sensations that would arise when a different aspect would come forward and then when it would subside. And so I remember her telling me that when she had one aspect, they were very drawn to glass. And she knew that they were very present when she's walking down the grocery store and picking everything up and holding it to the lights. Like, ooh, look at the way the pickle juice is in the glass, and, you know, those types of things. And so there were some aspects that were here, like to just experience the tactile, you know, all of the sensational types of things. And then, of course, people have Kundalini experiences, which they say, well, that could be a walk-in experience, but a Kundalini and a spiritual awakening occur after the individual has already begun a spiritual path and they're already working, you know, towards some type of a goal like that. And then you have people like just what you were talking about, which I believe is a different type of a soul infusion, not necessarily the walk-in, but it's a soul infusion where people now on the planet, they're so ready, they're so ripe and juicy, they're starting to open up, and more of their higher self begins to pour in. And that's what I call a higher self infusion. And I think lots and lots of people are experiencing that right now on the planet.
Yeah, this is fascinating. I mean, and again, just throw a few things at you. Just I don't even know where it's going, but I do remember back in those early days of Soulogy, because there was, like a lot of people in the initial awakening, there's a really a really loud, clear communication. So until you get on your feet, I guess, I don't know. But I remember being told or shown a specific number. Like you're having, I think it was 60 or 80 different aspects jump in every day. Now I understand, and then at the whole time that I have the consciousness of my soul, and it feels the same from day one to this day, right? But there is this awareness, and the way that I guess I kind of, and you're saying, I think ultimately the same thing, which is almost like the connectivity, the multidimensionality, the monad, whatever you want to call it, is it's all there, and kind of like you said, braiding. It's like I don't feel things leave. Now I know everybody's different,
right?
But yeah, I mean and I just saw a long comment from our friend Adam Marquez, who's got some pretty good intel, and he was even saying it's really cool to hear these different perspectives. Now, one of the other things that's always intrigued me, because it's a gut feeling, it's a knowing, and then of course in my role, which I don't talk about a lot, but obviously I'm very familiar with this template. It runs through my soul lineage. It's the same function, kind of like bringing in frequencies to an ever expanding vibration to expand the universe, right? That's my role, producer, whatever you want to call it. So with that in mind, and looking at the field through this period, this 10 years, it feels to me like that as a collective, I'll call it the human hybrid species, okay? And let's say that's the car, the story, right? That in somehow, some way, it's graduating, almost like it's an individual body, and we comprise it all, right? That it's almost like a coming out, like an initiation has been completed or is being completed, and we're being brought in to this higher dimension or timeline or frequency, almost like we're getting our chair at the end at the table, the round table of spirituality, or the round table of the monad, or the round table of the star family or something. We're getting an equal chair. Like the species itself is a soul. I don't know if you can shed any light on that, or if you have anything to say on that or not, but and it's all fascinating, because at the end of the day, when I take all the different intel and expressions like your own, I go, well, we're like a copy is a copy. It's like the universe through our journey is reconnecting to itself. And we're, by virtue of that, we're pulling everything into this Merkaba. That's a physical Merkaba almost. Yes. And the last thing I'll say is Pamela mentioned on the show this weekend, and her and I've said this before, and others have as well. I mean, we've done this before, that whole thing. Oh, yeah. What she said this weekend, which really struck home for me, was we've done this before, but we've never done it like this. And so it just gives me this special feeling about the human hybrid species. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but yeah. So go ahead. Thank you for letting me say all that.
Well, yeah. And, I think that's a great point. I do believe that our species is moving to its next phase of evolution, along with Gaia moving to her next phase. But I think all of those phases are already here. And we are just now able to rise to that vibratory frequency. And we start looking around and we're thinking everything is different. That's why we've already been there, because we are there. We just have to open up and to receive that and to clear those lower vibrations out. And that's what, so many people are experiencing now. They raise in their frequency, but then all of the things happening on this planet, try to pull them back down through fear and lower their frequency. So they're kind of in this vacillating, it's almost like a mixer, and they want to get out and they want to go up to this higher frequency, and they can, but they've not yet learned to maintain it because they still haven't cleared all those frequencies. And so I think right now, a lot of people are clearing so much stuff. And I think that's why we're seeing everything we are on the planet. It's not that, politicians are corrupt. They've always been there. But now all of a sudden, people are saying, no more, no more. We're drawing a sand in the line. It's not like we don't know some of these secrets that go on. It's just that people are raising to a point that they're saying, this is no longer acceptable. And we're drawing that line in the sand and we're saying no more. So everything is the way it always has been. It's just that we are moving and we are changing to arrive where we already are, because we're nothing more than pure consciousness. Everything is consciousness. We're actually already where we want to be, and we're dreaming this dream and having this holographic like dream, because we've all agreed that this is a computer and this is a chair and this is a wall. And, we all have this mass collective consciousness, but together now that collective consciousness is starting to change. And you can see more and more division within that consciousness. And it's almost like this consciousness is shaking out all the lower stuff. And that's okay. That lower stuff, it will rise eventually anyway, but it's not what we need at this time.
Yeah. I like what you said, because I look at it like if you use the example of the visible light spectrum, or any of our, let's say, 5 senses,
right?
That it's all there, but the field itself, of course, predicated on the individual. I get that, but it's there. It's just, I'm seeing more now. I'm seeing the waves. I'm seeing, the colors. One of the things that I see on this program, a lot of times I'll see things, as we all do, higher self, or aspects or messages and visuals. And, but there's also this bleed over. There's this seamlessness that's starting to come through. Like we had a lady on this past week, our friend Fiona, and she was telling us in the beginning of the show how, since she was young, she could see energy, and she was describing it to us. Okay. She said, I see waves and I see colors and I see things. And then as the show gets into like the second half hour and then the third half hour, the screen starts to get this film on it. You see a rainbow, you see waves coming in and rays of light. Now, and I said it on the show, I said, you can say that this is the camera. You can say that it's a reflection off of crystal, and it may very well be, but you're seeing it all the time now. You're seeing it in pictures people take, not just of themselves, but what they're looking at. So I love that, what you said about prove to me that there's a soul. Because I say that often. I'm like, okay, how do you really know? How does anyone really know? Because really what it really gets down to, it's this is all we have right here. We don't know. We could be worm dirt. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying, is these things, it's again, get out of the way. It's there. You're looking at it. So she sends me a message. Now she's a photographer and has been for years. It's one of the things she does. And I don't even remember what the message said. She said, oh, I looked at it, because she couldn't see it while it was happening. She went and watched the show, and she said, well, this was making this happen, and da 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 da. Like, so she was feeding the human logic, right? But then she said, but I'm so happy that I could share this with you because this is what I see. So you can't make this shift up, I mean, and so that's what I think what you're or the literal or the physical experience or the human experience of what you're explaining. How does that look? What does that look like? Well, I think that maybe we're going to start seeing that more and more and more as people like you and people like her have seen all their lives, and and all that. So it's fantastical, but I can feel it's true.
Yeah. Have you noticed how the evening skies are starting to change a little bit? They look so different. And yesterday, my husband and I were out on the Ranger. Now we live in Leadville, Colorado. That's 10,200 feet in elevation. And we go in what we call the high country, which is 11, 12, 13,000 feet. And when we were up there yesterday, there were orbs everywhere. There were blue orbs. There were pink orbs all hanging out in the tree, to the point it even looked like they were Christmas balls, hanging on the pine trees. It was amazing. And then as we came around and we hit a little plateau and you could see over onto the mountains, there was a whole series of clouds. And you could see the energy pouring from the clouds down into the mountain. And then you could see the wave. It was just like, when a rainstorm comes and there's what you call the sheets of rain. Well, it was like sheets of energy and sheets of pixelation that was just moving across. And I kept saying, oh my gosh, the matrix is changing. Check this out. Watch it. My husband's like, I'm driving. You watch it and tell me what's going on. It was amazing to see that yesterday. And more people are seeing that. And it's funny because like I'll have clients that are pretty mainstream that come in. And as I'm starting to work on them and they start to talk and we're starting to release the energies that's being held in their body, they'll start saying some of the strangest things like, all of a sudden, I don't believe in this stuff, but I walked outside and I saw this round thing just floating in the air. I wonder what that was. And so even mainstream people are really starting to open up. And we all have that propensity. We all have the ability to do that. We just need to be willing and to allow those shifts and those changes to occur.
Yeah. I'm with you. I mean, and people talk about it all the time. I experience it all the time. I was telling my friend last night who's been downloading dragons and turned into an incredible artist out of nowhere. All these stories, these people have these, and maybe that's the other aspect comes in. But I was sitting here talking to Morgan the other night, and all of a sudden I see this gold dragon pop its head in this window. And I'm like, but it's becoming commonplace. It's, and even having a platform like this, 3,000 shows, and people come talk about fairies and they talk about visitations of all kinds.
Yeah.
And you're just going, okay, it's all there.
Yeah.
Every bit of it's there. It really is, and it's, I love what you said about the quintillionth or quinbig, like that's, what I mean? That's like, we're all coming from a different perspective to the nth degree. Yeah. Like I just have a little piece and I thought it was this big, but it's really only like this big.
Right.
And it's a part of a piece of me that's this big. And, this whole explanation that you're giving. And I've always believed and understood from my own, communication with the universe that this is a universally seeded planet. No, it's not easy. But that when we get through this, we'll be like a universal healer because we'll be made up, or say we'll have the code of such a wide expanse of dark and light. I mean, we'll be universe creators, basically. You know what I mean? I mean, it's aligners, like universal aligners. So it's fascinating to hear this stuff. I'm so happy to be part of a platform that this is this needs to be mainstream, and I'm gonna do everything I can to make it mainstream. These stories need to be heard, because I'm a big believer that some, especially now in this climate, all you got to do is hear something. You know, it's not that you don't have to go do the work,
Right.
but so much code is activated through hearing your explanation of, let's say in this example, walk-ins, or even how the universe works, or even how the earth is constructed, or an individual navigates it. You know, I mean, it's solid code.
Yeah, it is. And our voice carries that resonance so that everyone that hears whatever it is that they need and that they're ready for, those codes can begin to open up. But you know what you're talking about with the fairies and with the dragons, and as I was talking about how we're going through all of these multiple dimensions and, you know, really parallel universes. The way that my Hopi teacher always explained things was that, you know, the veil between the worlds are very, very thin. We were like this, and now we're beginning to merge until we become like this. And those beings feel comfortable enough, you know, because they're interdimensional beings now, and they can move in between the planets. It's just that we are not capable of doing that at this point. But there will come a time when we'll all be able to merge, because we will be at that same frequency. And they have a frequency of more of like an innocence type frequency. And I think as you begin to look at the population, I think more and more people, as they wake up, are going back to more of a state of innocence, because they're operating from the essence of their heart. You know, they're allowing everything that they know to just fall by the wayside. And they're operating from that place of heart, from a love energy and that love vibration. And I think that's where that innocence kind of comes into play.
Yeah, the Peter Pan thing. I told Morgan a couple of days ago, just trying to explain to her whatever I was experiencing. I said, "How do you feel like a king and a little kid at the same time?" Because that's what it feels like. It feels like I'm a little kid. I feel like Peter Pan and the God Pan. You know, like this God Pan, this, you know, the energy of that. If you know, I've always identified with it, but then Peter Pan, all in one. Like, how do you do that? And it's
You're
not
operating from passion. You're following your passion.
There you go.
So that's awesome. And that's really beautiful. So anyway, when once I started meeting with all these people and I started fleshing out the stories, then I ended up writing the book, and it was, I don't know, I rewrote it and rewrote it, you know, how you massage things until it's like, okay, I've got to stop this, and it has to go to print. And the name of the book is Walk-ins, The Cosmology of the Soul. And it's like, you can get it in the big paperback, and it's in audiobook, and it's in ebook, and all those different formats. But one of the main reasons that I wanted to get it out was so that it could serve as a lifeline for people who are waking up and who do have questions. They may not be a walk-in, but I think that by reading all those various stories by all those different individuals who have had all of these experiences, that they're going to find some commonalities. And when I started working with all of these individuals, it became very, very clear to me, everyone that I worked with, and let's see, we had 15 interviewees and 8 other individuals in the field of consciousness and science. And of all of those individuals, only one person said that they were from Earth and that they remembered their contract with Gaia. Wow. Everyone else is a starseed. Everyone else is from another planet. And I believe that there are so many people coming in at this time, and I call our star family people, you know, because they're the were hominid before we were. And so anyway, as these individuals start to come down, they're helping to raise the vibration of the planet, of the people, and helping us to get ready for this shift in consciousness. And I am excited if there's 60,000 new walk-ins getting ready to come in, because, and honestly, you know, Todd, one of the things I have never, ever, ever, and I've met, I can't tell you the number of walk-ins. I have never met anyone who has a negative agenda. Everyone comes in to be in service to humanity, to be in service to the planet. Every single person. And if there's someone that says, oh no, there's a negative person and they're a walk-in and this happened, they might need to check things out a little bit more, because there's probably something else going on there.
Yeah.
Because I can honestly say, and of the people that are walk-ins that know other walk-ins, none of us know of a situation like that where a negative entity comes in and takes over a body and says they're a walk-in.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you on everything. And I, you know, just again, picking up from the intel, I don't, you know, purport to do a lot of things, but I do this and I know what I'm doing here, but I also am able to see the field as a representation, as a micro representation of what's going on through this program, you know, through this platform. And it just feels like we continue to accelerate the convergence of the timeline.
Yes.
Or whatever you want to put that. But it's accelerating rapidly, which has to be, in my mind, predicated on the work done by the individual souls.
Yes.
Which, if you look like at the example you talked about with the global stage, well, if you look at the global stage as one body, one soul, one people, one person, right? It's doing the same thing we all been doing. It's looking at its crap, and it's staring it in the face. And now in this energy, it's getting louder and louder and more magnified, to where you get to that point and you go, I've had enough of this. So it is exciting. I just find it very intriguing and not negative to see the parallel. And I know there's some kind of incredible source magic in it. As the parallel of the distortion expands, the purity of the soul is expanding. Yeah. And it's mind-blowing. It's like you would think it's going like this, and in the paradox of the universe, it seems to be doing this. But in some way, it's doing that, like your friend says.
Right. Yeah.
Great.
You know, one of the things that people always were asking me is if they can call a walk-in in, if they can consciously choose to become a walk-in. And my guides have always told me no. Now, you can have more soul infusion to come in through all of your various spiritual work that you're doing, and have more of your higher self, you know, dropping in and anchoring in. But as far as a walk-in, that is an agreement that is made many, many lifetimes ago, when the birth plan was being created, because you have to have all the various players in place, because, you know, this is a stage. And so once you have all of the people in place, then that particular scenario can take place. And I said, well, so what happens if the person gets super depressed and they just can't handle it before the walk-in comes in? Then they said that if that person were to commit suicide, they would still have to come back to honor that contract at a different time, but they have to wait until all the various players in this lifetime are also coming back to reincarnate, and then that agreement has to be activated again.
Man, this is the stuff that dreams are made of. This is it.
Yeah.
It really is. And, you know, I really enjoy your explanation, because I'm very visual in my head. It's not words like a lot of people. And so I see like this, and here we go with the semantics, like what words do you use? But let's just say I see my oversoul. My oversoul is this container, and I'm obviously one little cell in the
Right.
container, right? And so let's just make it really simple. Let's just say there's 12 of us, 12
Okay.
of 12 of Todd's, and they're all, let's just say, an archetype, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're family, right? But it's within the confines of this container.
Right.
Now there's a line, a silver cord that goes out from the container, and there's a lot in between, but I'm just going to skip to the earth. Come to the earth. There's a selected one of the 12, which again, there's a lot between here and the earth, but I'm just going to keep it simple. Goes down, representing the monad, so to speak, in this experience. Not to mention, again, there's all that other stuff going on too, but this is just here. And then this is, by agreement, I'm going to step in, or I'm going to come in and thread with you, and so I can see that. And then I can see the replication of it itself, even here on the earth, which is fascinating, because I remember a couple of years ago, we were having some monad experience, Morgan and I remember them saying, you're going to start to see them in the flesh. And sure enough, like 2 nights later, 4 of them came in and merged with us. Now, these were people we knew, right? You know what I mean? So it's mind-blowing to me to think of the potential of our experience, because we're in physical matter to this level of density, that we're going to replicate what goes on up there. And what's the limit here? Well, there's none up there. And like listening to your explanation about the elder was telling you about how it's going like this, the only thing standing in the way has been our perspective and our belief systems of what we were not. And what you said earlier, that and I agree with you so much, and that's why the acceleration, that's why all these predictions mean nothing to me, because people say 2030, and I'm like, no. I'm present. I think we can knock this out in 3 months or 9 months. I'm teleporting very soon. I am.
I'm ready.
I am. I mean, I'm feeding this, not out of wishful thinking, but not to get off subject. I'm just saying, what are we going to create here?
Yeah.
When all this stuff falls away, what are we going to be looking at? Because I'm with you. I don't think we're going anywhere. I think it's all right here. And we've expanded the, let's just say the field of consciousness, or the field of creation, because of the level and the expanse of the polarities. Right. I mean, that's mind blowing. I just see the universe cheering us on, going, how far are you going to go? Because they're living vicariously through us. Yeah.
And take a couple steps closer to the fact that you and I are the same. We're the same. We're all part of source. We're all individual expressions having these different experiences for the growth and the edification of all that is. I mean, we're all the same. And I remember I was, after I moved to Colorado, it took me like 6 months to acclimate, because 10,000 feet is pretty high when you're used to living at sea level. And I had such a hard time. And during that phase, I was just having crisis after crisis, and and all this bunch of stuff. And I told my guides, I'm like, I just can't stand it anymore. Oh, I don't know why I came. Whoa.
Yeah, we've all been there like last week.
Yeah. And they're just laughing at me. And I'm like, this isn't funny, but their laughter was like, it was this joyous thing. And they told me something that I'll never forget. And they're like, in 100 years, you're not even going to care about this. So just get over it. You're having a human experience, and that's all it is. And so I've always tried to remember that. Anytime things are going bad, anytime I get super upset or frustrated or whatever, it's like, okay, I'm a soul in a body having a human experience. This will all be over in a couple 100 years. I'll be laughing about it. I'll already be where I'm going. Everything is okay. Plus, it's a projection of my internal state. So what is it that I need to change in here? Because everything is a reflection without. And so then I start looking, it's like, oh, well, yeah, okay, well, maybe, oh, maybe it was me and not
exactly
you.
Right.
So, that's kind of hard to do, but I was so blessed with my guides. They have always, they've been there and guided and supported me and given me such, simplistic information, because I came from a world where I had no, foundation, and everything had to progress over time. And it's just been beautiful to know that in this progression, to be able to understand how we really are all just one. And I don't mean just, but we're all one. We're all part of this consciousness. And yes, we are individual. And yes, we do have our own Shantias Khan or oversoul, or however you want to call it, monad. We have that. Yes, that is our true state. But at this particular moment in time, this is our true state.
Yeah.
Because this is what the consciousness is unveiling for us. And who knows, tomorrow I may be in such close resonance with one of my other fractal selves that they could blend and come together to make one. Who knows? I mean, there's so much out there that we just don't know. And that we have to really, we take it on faith, and then we sit back and it's like, oh no, there's no evidence, there's no this, there's no that. But the reality of it is science is beginning to qualify what the Native Americans have known all along. And the Native Americans, even though they did not have all of the all of the verbiage, they've been talking metaphysics for hundreds of years. Yeah. It's like we're all just catching up. We're all just catching up.
Yeah. Yeah. Right when you said something about, how big it is, it was 1 hour, 11 minutes, 11 seconds. That's what I like.
And it's 4:44 right now, too.
There you go. Yeah. You can't make this shift up. No,
you can't.
It's, yeah. I mean, like we had a brother on yesterday, Taino, and from Puerto Rico, and wow, his story was all of our stories, but the way he said it was, getting all this information is, great, whatever, but what's the difference between, like, I'm just not, these are my words, but a pious religious fundamentalist versus a pious light worker. You know what I mean? He was really bringing it down to an even playing field. And he said these words: you have to fall in love with humanity. Yeah. And it just went, whoa. And when you said, how our teams, because they do, it's always a simple truth. Now, from our perspective, it's not an easy path, but it's always a very simple set of, there's no complicated, convoluted, comprehensive, giant, tome to go through. It's always a very simple blip. This is it, blip, and then of course the laughter, because we do, like a little kid taking something too seriously, like you're talking about with the altitude thing. But yeah, I think this is the beauty of this journey, is how we are learning a new meaning of being present. And of course, with the quantum and the cosmic and the etherical and all the different layers that we are, it has so much more meaning than me and you, meeting in a park and hugging and saying we are one. And not to take anything away from that, but there is so much more behind that. Like, and I remember one last thing too. Like I remember a couple of people coming out, more than that, but a couple of prominent people coming out first of the year saying, when we get to the end of this year, the world will look nothing like it did at the beginning. And I know there's only 3.5, 4.5 months left, but with what's occurred over the last few weeks and even the last 2 weeks, I can see that potential is very much, or their prognostication very much could be a reality. Like, everything just is so different in an effort, from us all through our efforts to find that oneness that you're talking about. Yeah.
When all of the virus stuff started, last year, there was something inside of me that got so excited. I could not contain it. And I thought, what is wrong with me? How can I be so joyful? And why am I happy that this is happening? And, then my guides, honestly, they should give me an instruction manual, but it's like, this is the beginning. And so it's like, okay, I got it. Thank you. But I was so excited. And since that time, if you will think about everything that has occurred in the last several years, how amazing is that?
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that people had the opportunity to be able to stay at home,
Yep.
to drop in to more of themselves, to connect and reconnect with family. What a gift that was. And I see so many blessings and so much excitement coming out of that. And the way that families have rekindled themselves and how people have spiritually progressed.
Yeah.
I think that was a true gift given to humanity.
It was beautiful. It was a beautiful design.
Overall.
Absolutely.
Now, there was a lot of tragedy, don't get me wrong. And there were a lot of people that have lost their lives and, and that's tragic, but the overall gift of humanity. And, that's something else that, my Hopi teacher always, told me, that no matter what's happening in life, there's always a gift. There's always a lesson. So no matter what's going on, you ask yourself, what is that lesson for me? How does that apply to my life? Or am I the one that's creating this situation? And if so, what is it I need from that? Am I lacking something? Do I not have the joy that I think I need? Well, if I do, then maybe I'm attached to some kind of an outcome or an expectation. And so if we begin to really drop in to the essence of who we truly are, which that time gave a lot of people time to do that, then this unfoldment begins to happen. And that's when people start bringing in more and more of these light codes. And that is why I think we see such an acceleration and so many timelines, if you want to say, coming to fruition, but also expanding.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful process what's going on right now on the
planet. And the math is different now. The geometry is different now.
Oh yeah.
And even like you said about that bleeding over, the veil getting thinner, whatever you want to call it. Like I can remember when we came over in 2019, I think. I can't remember dates, but anyway, I remember when it was all over the social media, but almost in an unspoken way. But it was the sunsets and the sunrises, the pinks and the blues.
Yes.
We're like, what is that color? Like, it wasn't even from this planet. And I remember in January of 2020 or February going to South Florida and stayed at a sister's place. And I walk out to the beach, and that was the first time I'd seen it, and I hadn't seen it on the picture. And I was sitting there looking at it, and it was just like mind blowing, to the point where a portal opens. But I mean, even without that part of it, there were so many different colors that I felt like to myself, I'd never seen them before. There were blues and pinks and purples and greens, and it was just like, what's happening? So, this is, again, that's probably, the world's different. Morgan used to laugh at me. We do a session in the early days. She'd do a session to help me clear something. And I'd come out the next day and say, wow, you look different today. The world looks different.
Yeah.
And she'd go,
well, what about you has changed? That's awesome. That's awesome. But yeah, the sky is getting different. And it seems to me like that we now are being able to look into those different dimensions. You know, a lot of people talk about New Earth, but I think New Earth is here already. And I think that we're getting glimpses. And those skies that you're talking about, it's almost like sometimes you can see two different skies. You know, it's like there's two very different horizons that you're sitting there looking at. And so there's something definitely happening. And I believe that that's part of why I wanted to come to the planet, is because I wanted to participate. You know, I was laughing one day and somebody's like, well, if you were already on the other side and you were already in your collective and you were already this and blah, 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 why in the world would you want to come down here? And I was just joking. And I said, well, you know, forever is a long time and there's a lot of excitement going on down here. But honestly, I know I wanted to be part of that excitement because I always came in thinking there's something great getting ready to happen. You know, you can feel it. You can feel it in your body. There's an energy that's there that has not been before. And I think we're all being called to act on that energy, and that's what's helping us to all move. And I don't know what the pivotal point is to where mass consciousness will actually allow us as a collective group to move forward, but I really believe that we're getting closer and closer every day.
Oh, I think there's too many signs, there's too many people's intel that are coming in their own words that are aligned within a day or two. Like you can get a download and you can go, you know, out and look and you'll find people getting the same intel. And I'm with you too about the coming down here. I always see like as a star, you know, I'm a star. I'm illuminated. There's this beautiful tone. And you know, I'm like, okay, this is great. And it is, don't get me wrong, but let's go have some fun. I remember getting a download 10 years ago, you know, in the first few months, and and there was and we were on the other side and I was in like my bedroom or something. Right. And I was laying next to this woman. I wonder who that was, but you know, and they were like, oh, we got to go to the coronation. And I'm like, hey, you see that dream catcher right there? Why don't we hold hands and jump through it again? You know, like, so that, you know, a lot of people talk about the clarion call, Mother Earth's distress. And I'm not saying that's not relevant or real, but I'm with you. I think a lot of us came to be a part of something that is the newest and best version. Right.
Right.
And you can only do that by doing the work.
Right. And, you know, and that work's going to come in different forms for different people, and different people will have different roles in this. And not everybody needs to be out, you know, talking and kind of doing the stuff that we're doing and creating this and creating that. Some of the most powerful work is taking place by those people that you never hear from.
That's right.
They're behind the scenes. And those are the people that are consciously building a foundation for all of us to be able to move forward. And so when people come to me and they're like, oh, well, you know, I'd like to do what you're doing and I'd like to do this, but I don't think I ever can, and da, da, da. And I'm like, but do you not see how your smile brightens up everybody's day that you come in contact with? That's important. That's important. Everyone has their own gifts and their own talents and their own specialness that they're adding to this. You know, we all have a little piece of the pie. That's and right. I think that we're all the same. We're all a soul. We're all having a human experience. It's just that we're going about it, doing things a little differently. We all have a different role that we're playing. One of the things I would like to mention too, though, is, you know, after I wrote the book, then because my guides throughout my time here, just when I think I'm doing everything I need to do and I start to get that little edge of comfortable, being comfortable. They're like, go bigger, expand. And it's, and I questioned and went through what the expansions were and all that kind of stuff until the point that I finally just started listening to them. And I thought that writing the book was going to be that was going to be the last go bigger. But then they told me after that to even go bigger again, which then caused me to start working with Neil Gar with the Portal to Ascension and Alan Steinfeld New Realities. And we brought forward that first walk-in conference. And after that conference, I had so many people calling and texting and emailing me that it was very clear that something happened in that conference that sparked people's memories, and they were looking for community. And so that's when I formed the Wish Alliance. And people can go online. It's wishalliance.org. We have all types of information on there, and there's meditations, and there's articles, and there's videos. There are services where people, if they want to share their services, they can get a hold of me, and we put all of that up. But I began working with a lot of individuals who have their faces out in the public and out into the community. And the ambassadors that we have are everyone is very vetted, so if someone goes to that site and they're looking like, man, DNA activation just keeps calling me. I don't really know what it is, but I want to talk to somebody about that. They can go to the Wish Alliance site, click on services, find somebody that provides that service, and then they can get a hold of them and they can start working. But in addition to that, every Thursday night, we have Zoom meetings from 6 until about 8, sometimes 9, honestly, sometimes 10. Depends on the dialogue. But every Thursday night from 6 until whenever, and people can sign up on the website if they want to participate. They can see who some of the past speakers have been. They can click and listen to their presentations. But all of this collective energy together has really started some kind of a movement where people are being able to find out that they can come together, and that there's family, and that there's support, and they can share their story. One Thursday a month, we have what we call family reunion. And if people are new to the call, they can share their stories. And some of the things that people have been through are absolutely, astounding to me. Their walks and the faith that they have had, or even the messages and the transmissions or downloads that they're receiving, that they're bringing forward. And so I think there's more and more people that are really starting to reach out, people starting to get involved. More and more people are waking up. They don't have to be a walk-in, to be having this type of a life-changing experience. Because the Wish Alliance is walk-ins, indigos, starseeds, and hybrids, but we work with people who know they're dimensional beings, or we work with individuals who are from the angelic realm. And so everyone is bringing their information. And I think that it's really making our little collective container much, much stronger by having all this information to come in. So if there's anybody that's kind of looking for that kind of a platform and people to talk to, please, check out the Wish Alliance. And the next thing that we're going to do is the Starseed Conference, and that's coming up on October 30th and 31st. And so we're going to have some phenomenal speakers over 2 days. There'll be 7 hours a day with speakers, and then at the end of every day, we'll go ahead and have, kind of like a panel where people can ask questions. But from all of this information that people are sharing, whether it's through the Alliance or whether it's through workshops, whether it's through whatever platforms that we're, kind of connecting into, it is very, very clear that more and more people are having experiences that more and more people are receiving downloads and transmissions, and they're coming into that knowingness and that solidification that they are souls in a body, having a human experience. And shows like what you do, Todd, I mean, you reach so many people and feed the souls of so many people. And there's such a plethora of offerings and stories. Everybody can connect somewhere. They can connect in or plug in.
That's right.
So it's, I think,
you just described Soulogy. I mean, that's the same thing.
yeah.
You know, I had Alan at the Soulogy Fest. Neil was introduced us to him. Her talks. We had a variety of people. It wasn't just speaker after speaker. You know, there was a speaker, then there was music, there was a speaker, then there was light language. I mean, it was, you know, it's all happening. It's bigger than all of us. There's a giant smorgasbord out there, a buffet, and there's something out there for everybody. But yeah, what you're doing there is very much in line with what we've been doing. You know, I was told from day one, this is a tent that everybody's a part of Soulogy, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And we've had many spin-offs and seen a lot of people start their own initiatives and shows, and it's fantastic. It's just it's the physical representation of what we do in the ethers, on the highest physical representation of the ethers, which is the Ethernet. So it's a beautiful thing, and you're a beautiful lady. I appreciate you sharing space with us and honoring us with your presence.
Well,
and,
thank you so much. This has been a blast.
I look forward to collaborating with you down the road, and I wish you the best on everything that you're doing. And
thank you so much.
yeah, and you and your loved ones. You take care. Peace out. We'll see you guys later today.
Thanks, guys.